Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. I'm Shivan Janna. This is Speed News. Let's get started. US President Donald Trump has said that Iran is intentionally delaying a nuclear deal with the United States and that it must abandon any drive for a nuclear weapon or face a possible military strike. He said US options for a response include a military strike on Tehran's nuclear facilities. Trump's statement comes after both Iran and the US said that they held positive and constructive talks in Oman. After the talks, Trump has said that the Iranians need to move fast to avoid a harsh response because they're fairly close to developing a nuclear weapon. Second round of talks between Iran and the US are scheduled for this Saturday, the 19th of April, after the indirect negotiations in Muscat. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson reportedly said that the next talks would take place in Oman's capital, Muscat. The Dutch foreign minister had earlier suggested that the talks would be held in Rome, but now they are scheduled for Muscat. Egyptian mediators have passed on an Israeli ceasefire proposal to Hamas, which includes the release of half of the remaining hostages in the first week of the agreement, an extension of the truce for at least 45 days, and the entry of aid into Gaza. The proposal also includes the disarmament of Hamas and all Palestinian armed factions in the Gaza Strip as a condition for a permanent end to the war. Hamas has said that it is studying the truce proposal and it will submit its response as soon as possible. However, the Palestinian militant group has rejected calls for disarmament as a red line and something that is non-negotiable. Amidst a trade war with China in full swing, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has hinted at a big deal with China at some point. Speaking to Bloomberg TV, Bessent said there was no reason for the US and Chinese economies to decouple, but stressed that a deal with China would be more difficult since it is US' biggest economic as well as military rival. However, the Treasury chief added that President Trump and Xi Jinping have a very good relationship. The White House has said that it is optimistic about a trade deal with China. However, officials have made it clear that they expect Beijing to reach out first. US President Donald Trump hosted El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele at the White House. Both Bukele and Trump have ruled out efforts to bring back Kilmar Garcia, who was erroneously deported to El Salvador, and US confirmed that. Speaking to reporters at the Oval Office, Bukele called Kilmar a terrorist and ruled out his return, saying he did not have the power to return him to the United States. Trump praised Bukele for building massive jail complexes and said that he would send as many people living in the US illegally to El Salvador as possible. Harvard University has been hit with a $2.2 billion freeze in federal funding after it rejected a list of demands made by the White House, which said it was intended to crack down on campus anti-Semitism. The call for changes to its governance, hiring practices and admission procedures expanded on a list Harvard received on the 3rd of April, which ordered officials to shut diversity offices and cooperate with immigration authorities for screening of international students. However, Harvard President Alan Garber vowed in a letter to students and faculty to defy the government, insisting that the school would not negotiate over its independence or its constitutional rights. Fugitive Indian businessman Mehul Choksi, who was arrested in Belgium in connection with 13,500 crore rupees PNB scam case, has filed a freedom request on health grounds. According to media reports, an appeal has been filed pleading that the investigation can continue without Choksi being in custody, as he is suffering from medical conditions and is not a flight risk. His lawyer said that Choksi was undergoing treatment at a hospital when he was arrested by the Belgian authorities following an extradition request by Indian probe agencies. Tensions between France and Algeria have escalated after Algeria ordered 12 French officials to leave the country within 48 hours. The decision came after France arrested an Algerian consular official on suspicion of involvement in the abduction of Algerian influencer Amir, a critic of the Algerian government, in Paris last year. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot has warned of a swift response if Algeria goes ahead with expelling its officials and called on the country to abandon its plans. Unidentified attackers have killed nearly 50 people in Nigeria's Plateau state, and this is the latest bout of violence in a religiously mixed region known for intercommunal conflict and deadly land disputes. The attack took place in the villages of Zike and Kimakpa in the Bassa local government area. It comes less than 2 weeks after armed men struck multiple villages in the Bokos area, killing at least 48. Land disputes, often between Muslim Fulani herders and mostly Christian farmers, are prone to descend into deadly violence, especially in rural areas where law enforcement is largely absent and impunity is widespread. The United Nations World Food Programme has called Sudan the world's largest hunger crisis. According to the UN agency, 24.6 million people, or nearly half of Sudan's population, is now experiencing acute food insecurity, while 638,000 are facing catastrophic hunger. The UN has confirmed famine in at least 5 areas, with projections indicating that 5 more areas will succumb to famine between December 24 and May 25. The UN estimates that over 400 people have been killed in recent attacks by the RSF and its conflict with the Sudanese armed forces, which enters the 3rd year. Meanwhile, the UK is hosting a conference in London to address the civil war in Sudan. The conference aims to unite the international community in finding a pathway to end the suffering and international response to the crisis. A routine photo opportunity turned unexpectedly comical for US Vice President J.D. Vance as he unintentionally dropped a college football trophy during a White House ceremony. While posing for official photographs, Vance attempted to lift the trophy for the cameras, but the top portion separated from the base and fell right to the pavement, momentarily stunning the players before laughter broke out. Vance then held up the remaining half of the trophy for photos with the team. A shallow 5.2 magnitude quake hit Southern California and was followed by a series of smaller aftershocks. There were no immediate reports of serious damage, but local train services were suspended in the aftermath of the earthquake. Tremors were also felt north of Los Angeles and the Mexican border city of Tijuana. Shortly after that earthquake, A video from the San Diego Zoo Safari Park in California went viral on the internet. The video shows elephants instinctively circling their young as soon as they felt the 5.2 magnitude earthquake. According to the zoo, this behavior is known as an alert circle and is intended to protect the young and the entire herd from threats. A sandstorm in central and southern Iraq sent more than 1,800 people to hospitals with respiratory problems. The sandstorm, which was the biggest this year, obscured visibility in an eerie orange cloud. Authorities temporarily shut the airports in the southern provinces of Najaf and Basra. According to local health officials, more than 250 people were hospitalized in Najaf province, while hospitals in Muthana province in southern Iraq received at least 700 cases of suffocation. According to the UN, Iraq, which endures regular sandstorms, is one of the 5 countries most impacted by some effects of climate change. The UK may be on track to see its worst year for wildfires. According to a report by European Forest Fire Information System, satellite data shows that 2025 is already the second worst year on record by area burned and number of fires. Data indicates that as of April 14th, an area nearly the size of Edinburgh has been scorched since the start of this year. Fire and rescue services in England and Wales have responded to 411 wildfires so far this year. According to UK's Met Office, further dry conditions could make 2025 the worst year for wildfires. Chinese scientists have created AI-powered smart glasses that provide real-time navigation assistance for blind individuals, allowing them to move around independently. Rather than developing the glasses from scratch, researchers use Google Glass, which is easily available in the market, and enhance them with their own small wearable AI software. The AI model surveys the environment and sends signals to the wearer as and when it detects any obstacles. Additionally, the system also incorporates synthetic skin sensors that warn the wearer of objects beside them. And in business, the dollar was steady but stayed close to the 3-year low against the euro and a 6-month trough against the yen. It hit last week as investors struggled to make sense of the back and forth changes on US tariffs. Still, currency markets were a lot calmer in early Asian hours after last week's turmoil that badly bruised the dollar despite a surge in treasury yields. After slumping to a 10-year low against the Swiss franc last week, the dollar was 0.3% higher in Asian hours. The dollar is down nearly 8% against the Swiss franc this month, set for its biggest monthly drop since December 2008. Trump's imposition and then abrupt postponement of tariffs on goods imported to the US has sowed confusion, adding to the uncertainty for investors and policymakers around the world. Oil prices inched higher, supported by new tariff exemptions floated by US President Trump and a rebound in China crude oil imports in anticipation of tighter Iranian supply. US Energy Secretary Chris Wright said that the US could stop Iranian oil exports as part of Trump's plan to pressure Tehran over its nuclear program. Also supporting prices was data showing that China's crude oil imports in March were up nearly 5% from a year earlier. Brent now trades above $65 a barrel in the spot markets, but analysts, including advisory firm Goldman Sachs, see prices averaging around $58 a barrel for 2025. Asia shares edged slightly higher on Tuesday, helped by gains in auto companies after US President Trump suggested he might grant exemptions on auto-related levies already in place. Japan's Nikkei rose 1%, with shares of auto companies like Toyota among the top gainers on the index. But gains were limited as uncertainty over Trump's trade policies and his constant back and forth on tariffs continued to cast a cloud over markets and the global economic outlook. South Korea announced an increase in its support package for the country's vital semiconductor industry to $23.25 billion. The measures come in response to calls on the government to expand support at a time of growing policy uncertainty under the current US administration and rising competition from Chinese rivals. South Korea's decision to pump more money into its key chips sector is designed to help companies cope with heavier costs as they compete globally. Asia's fourth largest economy is home to the world's top memory chip makers, Samsung Electronics and Sky Hynix, though they have fallen behind some rivals in areas such as chip design and contract chip manufacturing.